Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we're interviewing Astrid Kallsen, who is a skilled art model and fashion model and commercial print model and every other model that I can ever think of there's probably some genres I'm leaving out, but we're glad to have you on the channel and glad that you consented to do an interview with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So to start, tell us about what made you decide to do modeling.
It's a bit of a long story. I don't know where to say I began deciding to start to do modeling. I did decide to try some figure modeling while I was in college. So in some ways I started to do modeling there, but that didn't really get me into photography modeling from doing that. I didn't get into doing photography modeling until I dyed my hair blue. And I thought, yeah, I know, it's a little silly.
It's a thing because when I did the interview with Tiara, she did the same thing. She did blue hair.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know. I used to dye my hair various colors and I figured I was never gonna be able to do this again in my life. So I was like, well, I have a crazy color in my hair. I might as well document it and do photos. I had a friend that had been really wanting to take photos for a while. And so I ended up agreeing to do some photos for him because I had the blue hair. And then his friends were like, oh, we'd love to photograph someone with blue hair, which seems so funny. But anyway, so I don't know, and I enjoyed it well enough, but I honestly didn't really know much about this world. I'd heard little things here and there over the few years that I had started modeling, but as far as a full-on career, I never really considered that until a few years later. And I had a friend that basically forced me to go on tour with her, and I didn't even realize that's kind of what we were doing. She had just recommended that we go to other states to try to book work, and I was like, no one wants to book us in Georgia. Why would anyone want to book us in another state? And there's just not a lot of photography in Georgia.
Back then anyway. I think now there's plenty.
There's getting to be. It's growing. Yeah. But for a long time, it just wasn't there. And I guess I was really surprised that when we went on tour, there were actually all these photographers all over the place that actually wanted to shoot us. I had just kind of assumed that these other states had their own models. Why would they want someone from a whole different state? But it turned out that that's kind of how this whole thing works, is people go to different states and shoot with different people and different kinds of landscapes and different kinds of artists, and all looking for different kinds of looks. And even though I did this tour and it was really interesting and I kind of learned more about this world, I was like, I just don't think I could ever do it. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was in college, so it was kind of difficult to both be in college and also try touring as a model. So I was kind of doing it here and there, but not a lot. And I figured once I graduated, I would have to get some other job and then I'd never have time to model ever again. So I always assumed that it wouldn't go anywhere. But once I graduated, I spent some time doing internships, volunteering, looking for jobs. And in the meantime, I kept modeling. And at some point, I started to ask myself, why do I keep looking for other jobs? Why do I look for other things when I just keep coming back to the modeling? So I ended up deciding to just work and do this full time. And that was about, oh goodness, maybe 5 years-ish ago. I mean, COVID kind of interrupted it. So I don't know if you want to say 5 years ago or 4. Mm-hmm. Because right at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, where I was screw it, no more of these dumb internships and stuff. I'm just hitting the road and going. And me and this other model at the time, I don't know if you've ever heard of Nova Moore.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't think, well, she's in and out of modeling now, but we were going to tour for 5 months straight. And 2 weeks before we hit the road, all of our bookings and stuff like that, COVID closes everything down, and we ended up not being able to do that. But I don't know, I guess I just became determined because I was I don't know, I'd spent so long kind of in and out of modeling, kind of not sure if I wanted to do it, that I was no matter what happens, I guess I'm just going to try it. And I did try looking for another job in 2020. And instead, like a big modeling tour fell in my lap instead. And then I just kind of went with that. And it hasn't stopped since, pretty much.
Very good.
Yeah. So I know it's a really long story and it's probably not the most interesting, but it's been a very weird journey.
It's been a weird 5 years, huh?
It's been a very weird 10 years.
10 years. Okay.
But yes, 5 years especially.
Just for people who don't know, when you said figure work at the beginning,
Yes.
for college, that is not photography, that's drawing.
Yes. So a lot of the times I know figure work could also be for photography, but so many people end up just using it for like live figure work or live art modeling, where you just kind of like sit for painters, sketch artists, sculptors, things like that. And I did that at my university. I don't know, I noticed that they had it. So I just kind of decided to try it out. Like most dumb people, I thought, oh, this would be so easy. Like they paid very little at my university, but I was like, what an easy way to make $10 an hour to like stand there completely still. Like
right.
How bad can that be? And that's like some of the hardest modeling out there. So
do you feel standing still for 10 or holding a pose for 10 or 20 minutes at a time for an art class is more difficult and more strain on your body and your physical health than doing art nudes for photographers where you're not standing, depending on the medium of photography, because I know the wet plate stuff can require you to stay still
for a little bit,
similar amount of time. Yeah,
I would say it's like two different kinds of exercises, you know. One's the static and the other one's the dynamic. So they're both pretty rough on your body if you're like not taking care of yourself. But if you do everything in moderation and you're really focused on like your posture, going to the gym, eating healthy, getting enough sleep, like I think that's one of the things that I really like about modeling is I do not take great care of myself, but I have now a job that forces me to in a lot of ways.
Right.
Because like if I get up in the morning and like I'm hurt or sick or I don't know, like your back's aching, you can't do nearly as much. You suddenly can't do your job or your work. So you got to make sure that you're drinking all the water and doing all the things so you don't end up fainting at your job. I'm sure a lot of physical jobs are like that. But yeah, I would say the physical or the figure art live modeling can sometimes be really rough. It depends sometimes on like who you're posing for. Posing for like very beginner art classes can be especially difficult because any sort of movement can really throw them off. But at the same time, like if you find a good pose that you can hold for a while, it's almost easier than sometimes moving around and trying to think of like, I don't know how I would describe it. It's almost like dancing or acting and trying to like form a bunch of movements for one photographer, but it becomes like cardio versus doing like strength training at the gym.
Right.
If you have like a photographer that's shooting. Although I would say sometimes like my biggest fear is like film photography, just because like you get that one shot, you know, and like there's no like flow posing or anything. You can't.
Right. Film photography forces the photographer to slow down.
Yeah, which is really good.
Yeah.
And it's really good for me too. But like every once in a while, I have to make sure not to get in my head too much about it. That I'm just like, pick a pose, the right pose, and you only get this many shots. Reminds me of what they used to say on America's Next Top Model, that they would only give like a certain number of frames to each model.
Right.
And now when I think about modeling, I'm like, what if we did that with digital?
Oh my gosh.
But like so many people come back from a shoot with like thousands of images.
Yeah.
And to be fair, now since I've started doing some photography, that can be incredibly intimidating and overwhelming as well. So
do you photograph models also yourself? I mean, just for artistic expression?
A little bit, mostly for shits and giggles.
Right.
I would say that I got a little bit into doing photography. I mostly got into doing photography for self-portraits. And that was just because I was determined to get better at modeling. And really, like they say, the practice of mirror, but like the mirror is always looking at you from a specific angle. Working with like a camera, you understand a little bit more about your angles, your lighting, and the limitations of like cameras and lenses. So I did it to like learn a lot more then. And then a lot of like other models, if we would meet up, they would have cameras and we would just kind of take a minute to like shoot each other. And I think in some ways, sometimes it can be a bit of artistic expression, but it's more just like a different way of going out and getting coffee together. And what I found really interesting that I like about it is that I can learn a lot about other people's modeling from photographing them, because you can see someone's pose on the internet or wherever on their photos, but how do they get into it and what's the mindset of like how they flow into these poses and what's the way that they like usually interact with the environment. You really get that in person,
right,
better than you can get from like a photo. And so it's really gotten to teach me even more about like the modeling and the posing. I guess my heart's always still been in like modeling,
right,
no matter like how many photos I end up taking.
Right.
Everyone has their medium when it comes to art.
So when you photograph the models, how would you consider your work as a photographer? I mean, I use the term photographer, but I know you said you was just doing it as a hobby and a social thing when you're with your peers. Are you a deliberate photographer, or are you a spray and pray photographer, as some people call it? Where they're like, hopefully one will come out right.
I feel like I'm somewhere in between. Yeah, because like I want to be really deliberate, but I also have tried to be deliberate a lot of the time in the past and miss that shot, you know? Like you either like cut something off, or it's just not quite in focus, or there's just like that moment between like that shot and like what you saw where like the eyes like flickered. And so every once in a while, like get someone into, or like they'll be in a certain state or something like that, and I'll try to take like a few shots,
right,
like of that same pose, just in case.
Just in case.
But I've also found too that like so many models are like slow posers, so it's like you have to be like click, 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 and like I get it, you don't want to like miss it, but I'm also trying to get better at just being like, because I don't know, I've pulled through a bunch of images and like I don't need a bunch of images, and I like editing quite a bit, but editing takes a lot of time.
Right.
So I've tried really hard to just be like, okay, what looks good and how do I like get the look from each set? So I also think about this with my self-portraits, and like I think when I shoot self-portraits, I've kind of gotten into how I like shoot with photography as well, as I find the angle that I want. There's got to be a better term for that. The crop, the like
composition.
Thank you. The composition that I want. And then I take a few shots in that setting. Usually it's easier with like shooting someone else versus with self-portraits. It is kind of a flip and pray kind of situation.
Spray and pray.
Spray and pray. Thank you. Because I'm just gonna have this thing like go through and hopefully it catches me like without an angry face. Because you like, it's so hard when you're like trying to do both sides of the camera, but yeah, so and then I just try, like once I've like kind of gotten what I know I've looked for, as long as I know I've had like 3 shots that look really good in a composition, and I say 3 because usually it'll only be 1, but like at least if 3 look good, 1 will be good, you know?
Yeah.
And then I just switch to like another composition, and I really like that kind of framing for myself, just because I don't know, it forms a whole movie in my head. I don't really know how to make sense of it, but I think a lot of it for me comes from like storybooks and like reading storybooks all the time. So I really see like, I always think of it as like these little people like going off onto an adventure. So you see like the person and their whole landscape and what they're about to like see or do or interact with.
What do you feel is which genre model comes easiest to, or what is your favorite? Is it figure work? Some people say, some of the models will tell me figure work is good because you don't have to worry about clothes.
I mean,
and
true.
styling. Or makeup,
so
just
true.
Natural, not like crazy makeup with purple eyes, purple eyeshadow, and blood red lipstick, like the conceptual stuff.
If you want that, I cannot do makeup or hair to save my life. I never did it as a kid, so like I'm so behind on the practice. Everybody else can like do it, and I don't know, it never looks quite like everyone else's work. So I love some of the fantasy stuff, but I also know that like it takes a special art form to do that, because otherwise, at least with makeup, you can look like a drag queen, which, I mean, if that's what you're going for, cool. But half the time they're trying to make you look like, I don't know, some beautiful fairy, and instead you kind of look like a different kind of beautiful fairy. But I don't know, I really like the variety of it, because I just get so stuck, or I start feeling kind of in a rut when I do like the same genre over and over again.
Right.
So I love like a day when I'm going from like 3 different genres, you know?
Fashion and lifestyle and figure.
Yeah, just
Although you should probably do the figure first so that there's no like lines
and stuff.
Then
Yeah.
you have to wait for that to go away before you start shooting the figure work.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's just like you get to go, and maybe it's just because my whole family will like tell you a million times over that I'm just an overly moody person. But being able to like go through all those different moods and all those different like thoughts and parts of yourself, and kind of having all these different experiences throughout the day can be really fun. Although I will say, like, because I've done a few figure art workshops, that sometimes there is something really exciting about just doing figure art, and I haven't done it for very many other genres, but figure art like all day long, because you just get so excited. I don't know, I get really excited, and like if you're in like a great beautiful place, you kind of just build up. And I've even found with like figure artwork, because like you can do different kinds of figure artwork. Some people are looking for like a more classical look, some people are looking for something more abstract, some people are looking for like something that's more, I wish I could think of a good word for this, but something that like looks very casual and like lifestyle almost, but you're naked, but there's more art form to it. Right. And then there's, yeah. And so I guess like even when I have like a full day of figure artwork, it can sometimes end up being like a bunch of different genres. But yeah, I mean, especially if you get me outside, well, I say that, and I've even done this in like a studio where, because every single photographer has like a slightly different theme. Ignore that. Every photographer has like a slightly different theme. Like you have like this white box around you, but like, oh God, maybe I am just a small child. But like, I think of it as I get to like play pretend in this box, and it reminds me of like kind of improv class where like you could pretend like you're in the kitchen if you want, or in the forest, or whatever it is that you're doing, and you just kind of become whatever it is around you, like in like this white box, and you have to convince the camera that like that's what's happening. Right. And so I know a lot of people don't like studio work, but I really honestly kind of love it sometimes.
Well, I couldn't do figure work outside here. I get arrested.
That's fair. There's also that. And that's something that I found really nice about doing more of the lifestyle and like fashion and fantasy kind of work, is you can shoot it anywhere without getting arrested. Right. I'm just like, it's such a relief sometimes, because the constant looking over your shoulder, and like it was kind of cute when I was in my early 20s and doing it and being like, well, if I get arrested, I just look like a casual like young woman who was kind of crazy and silly. But like the older you get, the more you just look like a crazy lunatic woman that you should definitely know better.
Nah.
If you say so. I think about that too, like all the time. Like if I'm on an airplane or a train or something like that, I like to sit crisscross and like things like that. And I'm just like, damn, I like look like an adult that like doesn't know any better anymore. And like, I don't know. I still have such a hard time for remembering that I'm not 16 anymore.
You'll be all right.
That's fair. I'll take it.
What's for the new people who may be watching this and who are maybe thinking about getting into the freelance modeling world? Can you give some tips on how you keep yourself safe?
Safe. I think safe can be really difficult. Sometimes it's just, a lot of times you have to evaluate yourself, like how well you know your instincts. If you're someone who you know you're just more trusting, you might want to get help with figuring out who is safe and who's not. For me, I've been really lucky that I kind of feel like I trust a lot of my gut instinct, and I don't know, a lot of people think photography and modeling is like more dangerous than anything else, but like if you go to a bar by yourself, if you walk down the street by yourself, if you're like in any sort of situation where you're traveling alone, or even if you're not traveling, even if you're just like nearby home, so many people like get hurt just in their home environments, or by like people and friends who they think they've known forever, or whatever else. And for me, I've found that like you really got to trust your gut. And the way people talk to you on the internet or the way they come off on the internet can often lead to a lot of signs. I will say I try to be a little lenient sometimes and double check if I think someone is like throwing up some yellow or red flags, just because if someone doesn't speak English as their first language, I've found that sometimes they'll make some faux pas in their like messaging. That's just like,
it's a translation issue.
Yeah, it's a translation issue. But most of the time, if they say something weird or they're crossing your boundaries online, they're probably going to do it in real life.
Right. Tell us, for the new people who may be thinking of getting into this, how do you keep yourself safe? Are there any online resources that you could use, or do you ask your peers?
I think oftentimes you can ask your peers. I would say sometimes you can't always trust every single reference. And I especially remember like one of my first photo shoots that I did when I was first beginning ended up being with like this really creepy guy that like pushed my boundaries. And when I had asked for a reference from the model who I knew who had like shot with him, she had a great time, but like she had her boyfriend there, and then she's a different kind of person. So you never know how people are going to act. I would say that like you might ask for 10 references, and the 10 people that you chose at random from their portfolio might have had a great time. But maybe he didn't post photos of the people that he didn't like treat so well, or maybe you just ended up asking the wrong people. So there's things like that where like you can't always trust just getting references. It does help, but I would say a lot of it is trusting your gut and trusting how your interaction with them is to begin with. So like if someone's pushing your boundaries or acting inappropriately already through messaging, the words that they use, things that they do online, they're probably going to do that at the photo shoot. So either you got to go in knowing that you're probably going to have to run out, or just don't do a shoot with them. Honestly, it's not worth it in the end. Those aren't the kind of people you want to work with, and you want to stay away from being in people like that, their portfolios, or having them in your portfolio, because it often gives out a signal to anyone else who knows what that photographer is like, that you're willing to put up with certain kinds of behavior, and then you can end up in either a reputation or networking with people who you don't want to be working with. But I think my biggest, what I do is I always have an exit plan. Like, if I need to get out, do I have enough money to get out of a situation? Do I know how to weasel out of somewhere? Do I know where the doors are? Do I have a car? If I don't have a car, how am I going to leave? Like things like that, I try to figure out ahead of time so that way I feel prepared and ready. And I know some people will give their address and like the photographer's information to someone that they trust and know and love. I shoot with way too many people. My family would be so annoyed with me if I did that. But I do have on a schedule or a planner all of that information that is online that they could always receive and see. So just in case they need to for some sort of reason, there would be a paper trail of everywhere they go. Plus I have Life 360, so my mom loves following my adventures.
That's great. Well, those are some great tips for new people, and we're glad you were able to do the interview for us.
Yeah, thank you.
We're looking forward to seeing you again, I hope.
I love
hopefully it. We'll have time next time to do the video portraits.
Okay, cool.
Which would have been good, which I think you and Ciara would be really good for. Put you in one of those nice long flowy dresses and have you run around Eastern Parkway, and hopefully nobody
that's so cute.
Hopefully nobody razzes you. I'm not talking about, I'm just catcalls.
I know.
And
I get it.
It's just very distracting. To both of us. More towards you, but I get
sure,
because I'm flipping them off.
Oh, I know.
I'm shooting here.
It gets really annoying. Luckily, I've gotten very good at just
shutting that out.
Yeah. But it can be hard sometimes.
It's a mental exercise. I know.
Yeah.
Well, thank you once again, and we hope to see you again on the channel soon.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Goodbye.
Have a good one.